Now let's implement incrementing the view count. I will go to my controller, the recipe controller. So here I can simply just go ahead and increment the view count. So I can take the old one and add one to it. Then we just simply have to save this into the database, right? Because we changed one of the values. Now, what's wrong with this one is simply we are incrementing the view every time we are viewing this recipe, which is not making any sense. We have to increment it only once per viewer. So we have to store a piece of information to just indicate that this user has viewed this recipe before or not. So in order to do so, we can use this session. So I will just go ahead and implement it as a helper function inside my recipe. So we can go ahead after that and refactor it. So imagine that we have such a helper function called viewed. And as simple as this, we can just go ahead and create this method inside our recipe. So now let me just do indumps to make sure that I have access to everything I want. So we can just have access to the view count, right? Let me double check this and we have access to it. So what we should do now is simply to increment it. I'm going to increment it as the same way we did before, and I can just simply go ahead and save my model. Now, when it comes to incrementing and avoiding any duplicate values, I just have to double check that it has not viewed before. So here I will use the session in order to determine that this user viewed it before or not. So at a certain session key, I'm just going to check if this one did not view it before. I will just go ahead and view it, save this piece of information, and get back again and save that this recipe has been viewed before. Now we just have to determine the session key that we want. So in my case, I would like to extract it into a variable, and here I would like to store is recipe1 viewed. With this, we can just go ahead and make this one dynamic. In order to do it, I can just use two curly braces and just write here the ID of the recipe. And with this, we just made it actually kind of global. So right now, if it does not exist, it will just go ahead and name it. And I will just rename this one to session key. So with this, it should work just fine. And as a function, I would like to return the new view count. So maybe I can use it later on, who knows. And since we have it as a return type, I'm going to go ahead and give it to the function. So let's just go ahead and try it now. It became 4. And now it persisted at 4. We are not incrementing the view with every refresh. This is good. However, you might notice that whenever you are incrementing the view for the first time, you are saving. And whenever you do saving, normal saving, timestamps of your model, simply they will be the same exact second that you just saved. And honestly, this piece of information, to me, it's really like trivial. It shouldn't just simply go ahead and update the timestamps. So in my case, I prefer personally to just avoid having the timestamps incrementing every time. So simply you can just go ahead and turn off the timestamps before saving. So I can just go ahead here and just say this model has the timestamps turned to false. And honestly, you just have to return it back on just in case if you to use, for example, this function somewhere, and then after that you are making here some changes where those changes are going to trigger the timestamps. So that's why you should just always turn it back on. But since we have it as incrementing only, then we are saving, then I can just go ahead if you wish and do the helper function increment. So Laravel has just a helper function called increment, and you can just give it the column name. So in my case is increment count. So we are here incrementing, and just before incrementing, we are turning off the timestamps. We don't need to have save because increment includes the save process, and then we are turning it back on. So this is one way to do it, but let me show you just how Laravel, from Laravel 9 and up, how you can do it. So Laravel has a helper function called without timestamps. So let me just go ahead and write self here because it's a static function, self without timestamps. So this will take a callback. Let me have it as a closure. And now we can just simply go ahead and write everything we would like here. And if you to do any save operation or increment operation or decrement, regardless, it won't actually trigger updated at column. So in my case, I will just go ahead and have this increment the view count. And that's it actually. With this, we are incrementing the view count without triggering the timestamps. So everything is working just fine with it. So let me double check that it's working just fine. I will go ahead and refresh. And actually we have that value stored. So I will turn off this checking for just 1 second. And I will just go ahead and refresh again. It became 5. And now take a look here. It did not change. However, this one changed to 5. So this is exactly the behavior that I'm looking for. So this is working just fine. Now I would like to just expand the idea of having the view count into other models. So right now we have the first silly brute force kind of option, which is to go ahead to the category and have it here since the category has the column view count. And we just noticed that we have recipe here. So I can change this one to category and I can just go ahead with my life. However, please don't repeat yourself because obviously this is a bad way to do it. We have to do it in a proper way. So since this is kind of a feature, this is kind of a trait which my recipe model has, I can just extract this one into a trait. So let me just go ahead and cut this one out and just imagine that we have in my model something called has view count. So this is a trait which my model has, and I can just go ahead and create it. Since PHP Storm is smart enough, since I used use, it will obligate me to a template of a trait, which is what I need. Now I will start inside traits as a namespace, and now I can go ahead and have my lovely function here. Now, everything is working just fine with this one. However, we still have this one, which is kind of an issue. But the good thing is, since I'm using this one inside only models, I can have access to everything related to models. So guess what? Laravel has such a nifty function called getTable. And whenever you do this, it will actually just give you the table name connected with this eloquent model, which is almost what I need, but this one is plural and this one is singular. So let me just go ahead and use the str helper function of this string, and I would like to just make it singular. And this is going to be my model name. And as easy as having this variable, I can just go ahead and use it. So now this one became dynamic. Let me just show you guys what this variable has as a value. So here it has what I need, is recipe1 viewed. So this is what exactly the key was before. Everything's working just fine. I can just go ahead and use this trait with a different model. So I will just go here to categories and I will just have has view count. And as simple as this, I can just go to my controller now, and inside the show category, I can just come here and say this category has been viewed. And with this, we are just good to go, because right now we can increment views on categories as well. So let's test it. I will get back to my categories and I will view the second category perhaps. So this is the second category, which should be containing only view of 1, but now we just visited it. So let's just go ahead and refresh, and we have to refresh again and it won't change because we are storing this piece of information inside our session. I'm very glad you went through with this one with me, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much, guys. Now we will go ahead and work on the index recipes like this one, however without belonging to a specific category, which means all the recipes inside our website.